Okay, we are recording. Welcome, everyone. So this past week, I was reminded of the Harvard longitudinal study. This is a study that started over 75 years ago and looked at a few hundred men from Harvard and a similar number of men from one of Boston's poorest neighborhoods. All the men agreed to be interviewed, have their medical records looked at, and fill out questionnaires, and they all knew it was going to be a longitudinal study. The study is still continuing. And now, in addition to the original cohort, and there are several still alive who are in their 90s, there are over 2,000 of their children who are in the study. So naturally, the study has shifted over time. In the more recent iterations, it's become known as the Harvard Longitudinal Study of Happiness. In its simplest form, the discovery that they've made is that regardless of station in life, relative wealth, where one lives, all those kinds of factors, the single most important predictor of happiness is relationships. The study also points out that it's not the number of relationships, but the quality of those relationships, and that healthy, meaningful relationships have enormous benefits. They enhance our physical health, stave off dementia, and add years to our lives. So, of course, the next logical question is, how do we create the relationships that have these health-inducing benefits? And that's where this week's Parsha came into play for me. And I just love it when different parts of my life just kind of glom together. In this week's Parsha, Ki Tisa, we see examples of anger and forgiveness. We're even given a list of attributes that may be the key to healthy relationships. In the Parsha, God becomes very angry with the Israelites. So this is, for those of you who are not aware, this is the Parsha with the incident of the golden calf. And God is absolutely furious. Moses gets pretty angry too. In Exodus 32:10, God says, "Let me be, that my anger may blaze forth against them, that I may destroy them." Moses essentially talks God down from this wrath. He says to God, in essence, take a breath, slow down. Remember that you have had relationships with the ancestors of these people, and you've made some really pretty big, serious promises. So this example gives us the notion that relationships may stir strong feelings, and those strong feelings don't have to be the end of a relationship. Repair is possible. God goes on to create some boundaries with the Israelites, but stays committed to being in relationship. That seems like a good instruction for us mere mortals. Later in the Parsha, guidelines for this relationship are spelled out with the reiteration of the covenant between God and the Israelites. So another aspect of the Parsha that really intrigued me is what we often refer to as the 13 attributes of God. Exodus 34:6-8 states, God passed before him, meaning Moses, and proclaimed, Adonai, Adonai, a God compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in kindness and faithfulness, extending kindness to the 1,000th generation, forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin, yet not remitting all punishment, but visiting the iniquity of the parents upon the children and the children's children, upon the 3rd and 4th generations. I find this illuminating. These are some really good qualities to bring into relationships. But I also always felt somewhat confused because I know it's referred to as the 13 attributes, but it isn't 13. So I Googled, and here's something I found on My Jewish Learning. It's a lovely site. Each time God's name is used, it refers to a different aspect of mercy. Adonai, God is merciful before a person sins, even though aware that future evil lies dormant within him. The second, Adonai, God is merciful after the sinner has gone astray. And then El, which is the third iteration of God's name in this passage. Sometimes God's mercy is absolutely boundless. And then the notion of not remitting all punishment is explained on this site as, quote, God who is merciful, gracious, and forgiving, wiping away the sins of those who truly repent. However, if one does not repent, God does not cleanse. To me, this sounds like really good boundaries, which are necessary in solid, meaningful relationships. So as we sit together today, I invite you to contemplate the qualities necessary for the kinds of relationships that are so life-sustaining. After we settle, I will list the 13 attributes as they were translated in the JPS Guide to Jewish Traditions, which is the source quoted on the My Jewish Learning site. So now let's take our seats, really settle in. Feel your body's contact points with the floor, the chair, or the cushion. And let's take a few nice, deep cleansing breaths. Inhaling and exhaling slowly and fully through your mouth. And that exhale sort of blowing out the air as though you're blowing out candles on a birthday cake. And so again, inhaling fully and deeply. And exhaling slowly and completely. And once or twice more as you're comfortable at your own pace. And I'm going to go through this list just so that it's in your mind as you settle into your meditation. Adonai, God is merciful before a person sins. Adonai, God is merciful after the sinner has gone astray. God, El, God is all merciful. Compassionate, gracious, slow to anger, abundant in kindness, truth, preserver of kindness for thousands of generations, forgiver of inequity, forgiver of willful sin, forgiver of error, who cleanses. So I invite you to come back to the room at your own pace, maybe with a smile on your face. And I am going to read this reading that I found from Ruth Bryn entitled Attributes of God. Excuse me. Angry and afraid, unsure of himself, carrying the second set of heavy stone tablets, Moses returned alone to Sinai. As he took the familiar rocky path that wound, snake-like, up the steep mountain, he looked down on the scattered tents of the children of Israel. He saw the ugly scar on the earth where the golden calf had been burned. When he looked up, he saw the cloud waiting on the mountaintop. God might abandon Moses now and forget the sinful people in the camp below. He might leave them to the scorching wilderness or to the cruel tribes who waited at the edge of the desert. Abandoning us would be justice, Moses thought as he struggled up the mountain. Divine justice. As he approached the whirling, roaring cloud, a great wind turned him and forced him into a cleft in the rock. It held him there while a voice spoke. Adonai, Adonai, El Rahum Vahanun. In the whirling vortex of power at the heart of the universe, Moses discovered the voice of compassion and forgiveness, the voice of his God, his ultimate truth. It is good to try to be like Moses, a man who returned to God, a man whose fear and anger left him when he experienced divine mercy. It is good to try to be like Moses, who was reborn in the cleft of the rock with renewed faith and strength to lead his people out of the wilderness. It is better, it is sublimely daring to try to be like the God of Moses, to act always with patience and mercy, with love and kindness, grace and compassion, infinite care. So I will now end the recording